Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Ange. Ange is the mother of four children with autism, ages 28 to 12. Born in Paris, she now lives in the UK and helps ambitious entrepreneurs trust their intuition to make smart decisions in order to create success on their terms rather than someone else's. She calls herself a spiritual lawyer and has authored 2 books and 3 podcasts, her latest being True Spirituality with Ange. And so, welcome to the show, Ange. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about this spiritual lawyer thing. Tell me about that.
Okay, so it was actually almost by accident that I started calling myself a spiritual lawyer. And the reason was that I was an international business lawyer for 15 years with a thriving career, traveled the world, quite a lot in South America, by the way, which was really exciting because I used to speak fluent Spanish.
Uh-huh.
And then I left the corporate world, started having my kids. Well, I had two whilst I was a lawyer, but then I moved to the UK, had 2 more children, all of them turning out to be autistic, so quite a handful. And I sort of branched out into all the things I never had the permission to do whilst I was on my career, because I embraced law not because I wanted to, although it was a choice, I made that decision. But what I really wanted to be was an artist when I was younger. And my parents, knowing that artists are often starving,
Right.
that kind of,
Right.
steered me away from that idea.
Yeah.
So when I left the corporate world, when I was pregnant with my third child, I decided to explore all these things that I'd never given myself permission. So the first thing I did, and you can see actually some of my art at the back on the
Oh,
wall
okay.
here,
Yes.
at least
Uh-huh.
for the people who'll see the video. These are my oils. I used to do mosaics first, and I started exhibiting, and I was very, very happy to do that. And so, but I did need to try and, find a way to earn money. So I trained as a clinical hypnotherapist. And then one thing led to another, and I trained in tarot. And then I trained in mediumship and all sorts of things, all sorts of weird and wacky things, completely away from the legal field. And
Okay.
so after about 10 years, I reconnected with some of my old colleagues or friends from university. And one of my very dear friends tried to introduce me back to the crowd and say, oh, well, now Ange is a spiritualist. And I said, no, I'm not. I didn't want to be called a spiritualist.
Right.
And I said, no, I'm a spiritual lawyer. And that's how it started.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
I wasn't too sure what it meant back then, but it
Right.
was such an amazing conversation starter
Mhm.
that I stuck with it. And it's probably only in the past 2-3 years that it's really gelled together,
Mhm.
because I was able to understand that whatever I've done for the past 15 years actually is not disconnected from what I did in my career as a lawyer. They actually blend together in a beautiful way, because it enables me to bring spirituality in a very grounded way to people who don't necessarily want to turn woo or, kind of
Right.
play with the fairies.
Right.
Whilst at the same time, I think because I'm a lawyer, I want to understand the spiritual laws and I'm really fascinated by them. But I'm able to take everything with a pinch of salt from the religious community and
Okay.
even the spiritual community. I don't take things for granted just because someone tells me this is the way. Like
Right.
I came across a doctor in divinity
Okay.
who claims that there are 56 spiritual laws. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have a look into it. And when I looked into it, there was only one that stood out for me. And I was like, what is all this nonsense? I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone who's
Right.
religious,
Well, it's your opinion. That's fine.
but and that's probably where the True Spirituality podcast came into play, because I realized, having explored the spiritual world, let's
Uh-huh.
put it this way, for 15 years, I have come across a lot of weird and wonderful things that people claimed that I didn't necessarily buy into. And I'm
Mhm.
more of an experimental girl. I still have a scientific approach to things, because before I became a lawyer, I was actually really good at science and maths in school.
Mhm.
And And even though I'm open to the magical, I'm open to being inspired and to, keeping an open mind, I'm
Mhm.
not just going to take, whatever you say to me
Right,
as gospel. I
right,
just want to try and test it. And then if it works, I'll do it again. And I
right.
invite people to do exactly the same.
So it
So that's
sounds
a
like
bit how
you,
I came to be a spiritual lawyer, in the way to also clean up a bit the
right?
religious and spiritual
Yes.
world by busting myths and giving people permission to let go of what doesn't work for them. Because very often in the religious background or spiritual background, people say it's my way or the highway. These are the rules, and you have to abide by all of them. And I don't agree with that.
And we're not often given the permission to explore something else, because sometimes in religious communities we can be told, like, well, this is the way it is, and if you explore other things it might be wrong, where it sounds like, you wanted to explore all these things, take a little bit of this, take a little bit of that. And that's the thing for me too. I've been kind of looking at different things and know that what comes back to my core values, right? And what comes back
Yep,
to the things that I know to be true and the things that are working for me, but I'm also not closed off to other things. So I do enjoy learning from other people. That doesn't mean, like you said, that everything people say is the way it is or is gospel. It's just, it's a good way to try things in your life to see if, because if something's not working, see if something else will work for you, right?
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so do you work with people then individually or whatever in some sort of capacity to help them understand, or, you know, um, kind of work with whatever they're interested in feeling, or whatever their spirituality is? What do
So
you?
the bulk of the work that I do is as an online business mentor, because I've learned so much about the online world and
Awesome.
the online business, etc.
Yes.
But what I really love to do, that's the base. I have some really good, business bases, because I was a business lawyer, and then
Okay.
of course I've been running my business since and learned from lots of great teachers.
Yeah.
But what I love to bring into that is both intuition and spirituality, because I feel that, especially as entrepreneurs, but also in corporate,
Yes.
we are whole beings. And if we leave a big part of us at the door, that means we're not actually being true to our values and not authentic. So, in a way, I wished I could have owned my intuition when I was a lawyer. I didn't even know I was intuitive back then. I discovered I was since, and
Right.
I have studied now intuition for over 15 years, both through doing professional tarot readings, but also exploring lots of different modalities, including Reiki to master level. So I understand both about intuition, energy, the spirit world, and I really think that business people would
Mm.
tremendously benefit from that knowledge, which is why I'm coming back as a spiritual lawyer to
Right.
bring that knowledge to more mainstream society. Let's put it this way.
Well, it is part of us, right? Especially if that's something it's part of you. I know I have friends who do life coaching, things like that, and they may not say that they're using a spiritual, component, but they do, because that's part of them. And so we're using our intuition, and those kinds of things, whatever it is, as being a woman of faith, maybe we're getting, some downloads from God for this person. And why not talk about that? It's like, why wouldn't we? We don't have to say necessarily it's God or whatever, but we can, like, work that in, right? Is that what you're saying? We can work all these things that we are as a whole person. And
So I think that's a really interesting way you've put it,
okay.
because for the longest of time, I've split the two. So I was a clinical hypnotherapist by day, and I was a tarot reader by night.
Okay.
But what I found out is that by hiding this part of me from my clinical hypnotherapy, because I was afraid people wouldn't think I was professional if I said I was a psychic clinical hypnotherapist,
Okay.
I actually put off everyone, because people can feel
Yes.
intuitively that you're hiding something. They just don't know what it is.
Right.
And that will put them off. So I think it takes a lot of courage to come out, so to speak, as with your spirituality or intuition within the profession that you're practicing. but it has loads of benefits, because once you do, you can do that in your own terms, in your own way. And as you say, you don't have to mention God if you don't want to,
Right.
but you're more upfront with your clients. So you're niching in a way, and you're
Yes.
likely to attract to you people who are absolutely going to love you. And what
Right.
happened is, when I came out of the closet and blended everything in, I had people say to me, "That's amazing. I've been looking for someone like you for so
Yes.
long." Whereas I had lived in the fear of coming out, if that makes any sense.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it does make sense. That's for sure. And so you've been doing this for a little while, and how, so tell me a little bit about, um, I don't know, what led you to this point? How did you really, I want to kind of talk about your past and what life changes you've had in your life, what life
I've,
challenges
I've
that
had
you've had.
tons. I
Yes,
have
what
had
some life.
tons.
Yes, I
But I,
just want to talk about, because I know that when you and I talked before, we had some great conversations about the things that you're doing to heal, which I think are
yeah,
really beneficial for others as well. But tell us a little bit about your past and how you've gotten to this point where now you're helping others with their
yeah.
healing.
Okay, so what happened is, I was married unhappily
Hmm.
back in France. I had two little children under 6. And in the year before I moved to the UK and left my first husband, I had 3 massive health scares that nearly killed me. I had 3
Okay.
brushes with death.
Wow.
So up to then, I had a lot of ear, throat, nose infection constantly. I had to go to the, ORL, that's what it's called in France, the
Okay.
specialist all the time. They gave me antibiotics. I had an inkling that it was maybe linked to something emotional, but
Okay.
I didn't have the knowledge
Right.
to understand exactly what was happening. But when I had these 3 brushes with death, I started exploring more the link between the psyche and the body,
Hmm.
and it started to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So after I moved to the UK and escaped, so to speak, my first husband,
Right.
I the first, I suppose, one of the defining moments that happened to me, and I've put that all in a memoir that I'm polishing at the moment, which I'm very
Oh,
excited
awesome.
about. It's called Spiritual Lawyer. So it's about my journey of going from being a lawyer to being this weird bird that I'm now.
That's so awesome.
And so shortly after I moved to London with my 2 young children, I found out about a lecture that was given by Barbra. I don't know if you've heard her. She wrote several books, one of them called Hands of Light, which I'd read back in France, which is a
Okay.
fascinating book about healing energy. And I couldn't believe my luck that she was visiting from the States to give a lecture, like literally half an hour from where I lived. So I went there. It was a big amphitheater. There were tons of people in there. It was jam-packed to the roof. And here she is on stage starting to talk about energy, and suddenly I see her turn into a sun. Like literally she started shining this yellow energy that
Wow.
filled the entire room.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, what is happening here?
Right.
Well, what I didn't know is I was seeing her aura.
Okay.
She had a yellow aura, so she literally like looked like a sun that was shining in the room.
Uh-huh.
And I just couldn't believe it, but I had no one to talk about it with, because I was trying to find a spiritual teacher to support me, but as a single mom working full time, I couldn't find any place. I couldn't go on retreats. Whenever these courses were organized, I couldn't. And out of my frustration, I sent an email to one of these spiritual teachers and I said, look, how can you help me? I need this support. And I have these things happening to me and I have no support. And they
Right.
said, well, you're just going to have to wait until your kids grow up. And that was her answer. And I was so frustrated with it. Yeah, I know. I was so frustrated with her response, and I didn't take no for an answer. So I continued to search. And at the time, not all things were done on the internet. Actually, traditional psychic mediums insisted you had to do everything in person, whereas now they do all of it online.
Okay.
Since COVID, everything's possible, whereas before it wasn't.
Right.
So that's an interesting point in a way. I think
Yes.
people have their limits, their rigid ways, and I suppose the psychic medium world is quite rigid, or used to be rigid in that
Right.
way.
And I mean, we did find that out right during the pandemic, the way we thought, oh no, all these jobs can't be done online. Well, we figured out pretty fast how
Yeah,
many jobs could be done online. I'm so thankful. I mean, we're talking across the world from each other. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I'm so thankful that we're able to do things like this.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so and things are possible even through video.
I
You know?
know, I know. And then the second thing that happened in Barbara Brennan's lecture, which also took my breath away, is
Uh-huh.
that she spotted me in a crowd of 100 people. And she
Wow.
said, "You over there, the lady with the blue dress, you need to stop feeling ashamed of yourself." And I was like, I wanted to crawl because I am an introvert. I don't want to be noticed anywhere. So it was two things that were, it was quite powerful as a moment.
Yes.
And I suppose it encouraged me to continue my quest, my search for meaning in
That's
that
great.
respect.
Yes. That's great. I've actually had that happen before in a church service with a guest speaker. And it's
You,
wild when it happens because it's that connection. For me it was a connection with God, but it's like it's so wild to me, like to be seen, especially when there's something as an introvert, because I'm an introvert with extrovert qualities. But when I've had people say to me like, God wants you to know that he sees you. It's like, okay, those are the things that like speak right to my heart, because as an
yeah,
introvert we don't want to be seen, but we kind of do, right? You want to be known, but you don't want anyone to look at you. It's that's how I feel sometimes. You know what I mean? It's like it's this
yeah.
weird thing. That's why I say I have extrovert qualities, because I'm doing this kind of stuff. It's so
I
funny.
don't actually believe podcasting is actually it's very compatible with being an introvert because you're behind a microphone unless you're on video, and
Yes.
it's actually easier than to do things in person, in
Yes,
my
and
experience.
I do want to do things in person, but this is really comfortable for me. I love it that, I have sweatpants on the bottom. You know, it's so
At least you
it,
have pants,
I do have pants on, even though I don't need to. I put on pants for you.
You.
That's the thing. It's so interesting because yes, we're broadcasting our voice to the world, but yes, it's very comfortable to be in my home. I don't have to go out of the house if I don't want to, all those things.
Yeah.
It's really great. So tell me what happened after that. Like how did that make you feel when she
I was a little bit in shock, and then what happened is I moved from London to near Bristol, where I am now,
okay.
and it was a couple of years. Yeah, I need to backtrack it just a little bit because
Sure.
the person who gave me the strength to move away from my abusive husband with my kids to a country where I had no support, no family,
Yes. Yes.
so pretty scary, was actually a psychic medium who did a reading for me and who said, "You will love it in the UK. You're meant to go there. Go ahead." And she gave me her blessing.
Right. So
So
you
after
had
a couple of,
you got
sorry,
that
yeah,
courage to go and
yeah,
do that. Okay, that's awesome.
it's the little nudge I needed to,
Yeah.
because it's such a huge decision, including for my children.
Of course.
Um, and so after I moved from London to Bristol, I kind of got itchy feet to have another reading because I thought, oh, it was nice to have that reading back in Paris. I'd like to have another one.
Uh-huh.
So I go to my local village that has a little crystal shop, those crystal shops where,
Yes.
and so I mingle around and then I asked her, "Do you have someone you can recommend?" She says, "Absolutely. This woman, Joy," and she gives me her number. I loved her name as well.
Right.
Who doesn't want to
Right.
go and have a reading with Joy?
Right.
So I go and have that reading. Nothing prepared me for it, Laura. It
Oh
was
my
such a
God.
shock. So first of all, my grandmother hijacks the start of the meeting.
Oh.
She's by then. She died in the summer when I moved to the UK. And she's all blah, blah, blah. She was always very talkative and very extrovert. So she takes over the scene and starts blabbing around through the
Oh my
medium,
gosh.
obviously.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me all these things. And I was like, oh, that's lovely to see her. Got me a bit emotional. And then the lady says, "And you have a Native American guide just by you." And I had no idea what she was talking about. And I was like, "Native American guide, spirit guide? What is that? I'd never heard of it."
Right.
So I just kind of brushed it aside and thought, I can ignore that. It doesn't matter. I've had the message from my grandmother that all that matters.
Right.
And then at the end of the reading, she says to me, "Right, do you mind if I ask my husband to come in?" And I was like, "Okay." So her
Right.
husband comes in and he is a palm reader. So they kind of have an understood look, and he looks at my hands And then they have another understood look, and then he leaves the room. And I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, really.
Do I have something like a stain on
Yeah.
my t-shirt or
Right.
something wrong? You know,
Seems suspicious.
did I leave shampoo in my hair?
Right.
And then she blurts it out. She says, do you know that you have angel dust coming out of your hands? And I said,
Wow.
no
Yeah.
fucking way. I didn't say it
Right.
loud, but it was like in my head. I was like, I'm
Right.
running out of this house. I have to run. I'm
Right.
still a lawyer by then, you know, it's like this is
Right.
too much. So I pay her, I rush through the house. They try to stop me on saying, oh, what a wonderful person you are. I'm like, yes, yes, thank you, goodbye. Get in my car, sit down in my car, and feeling completely stunned, you
Yeah.
know, wondering what the heck is going on. Why did they tell me this? I'm not ready for this. I don't want to hear it. I don't want the responsibility. It's throwing my life upside down. I'm a lawyer. What am I supposed to do with this?
Right. Exactly. Because you don't know how would you combine any kind of spirituality with being a lawyer, right? Like you have no idea. Like how would
There's
you
no blueprint for that. That
there
never
is
has been.
no.
No.
No, and I
So I go
totally get
home.
it. I have such, you know what, I have such gifts too, and it's crazy to walk through this world and be try not to scare people.
She did scare
can
me.
I can with my friends who are, you know, in the same kind of, you know, spirituality and stuff. We can talk to each other in different ways, but not just regular people. You know what I mean? So it's fun to have the gifts, but you know, they're not we just don't
I
walk
didn't actually
around.
believe her anyway. You know,
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, you're just making this up.
right.
I'm only me. I'm just going to go home, sleep on it, and try and forget about it."
Right.
But then when I went to bed that night, I was thinking, if I have this gift, that means I'm supposed to use it
Yeah.
on some level. Even though I didn't believe in God, I'm not religious.
Uh-huh.
And the next day when I woke up, I thought, well, I'm going to give this a try. So she had like she was actually training people in spiritual healing. So I joined her
Okay.
circle, went there every week, and didn't really feel anything when I sent the healing energy, didn't really feel anything when I received it, but kept an open mind. And then I heard people in the room starting to talk about Reiki, and I was like, what's that? And said, oh, Reiki, that's a modality. And I was like, why do you want to train in Reiki if you're training in spiritual healing? Doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
But I once I heard the name, I thought, well, I'm going to explore that as well, because the spiritual healing I was learning, even though I love this woman, and actually in one of her sessions, that, you know, the evening where I went for training, I saw her shine as well, just like Barbara Brennan. She turned a pure, mind-blowing turquoise and filled all the room. And I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. This beautiful woman. She has and she had a beautiful energy. I really, really loved her. But I decided to explore this other modality because it didn't seem to be linked to church as much, because we had to go to church to do the spiritual healing. And so I explored Reiki. And the moment I walked into the Reiki master's home, she said, you're a natural healer, aren't you? And I was like,
Wow.
is it written somewhere on my forehead? I don't
It's
have a
amazing.
t-shirt.
I just love that. I love that. Yeah, that's cool.
And so I trained Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki 3. Loved it. Really, really helped me to understand energy a little bit more. Started teaching as well. But then I went back. So I had this fascination for intuition and psychic gifts because my grandmother was a natural psychic, but she considered it a curse rather than a gift.
Right.
Because she would see things all the time. And at one point, she actually read the tarot. My sister found out and told me, because my sister went into this crazy journey to find out about our ancestors, which is great because I didn't have the patience for that all the time.
Right.
And we realized that my grandmother had actually done tarot readings for friends and family for years. And then one day she found out that someone was going to die. And she clammed up and she said, I'm never going to do this again. But she was still plagued by the images and everything. She didn't think she had control over it.
Right.
So once I understood more about energy, I wanted to understand how psychic readings work. So I went to as many psychics as I could, almost like on a study course.
Right.
I observed them. I tried to understand how all of this worked. And every time I would go and see a psychic after Joy didn't tell me that, but every single psychic after her in the next year, where I went quite often, would say, you should be doing what I'm doing. And I'm like, no way. Like the healing, maybe I can take it on board. The psychic stuff, no, I'm not doing that.
And
But after
why
six or
were you
seven,
hesitant? Why were you hesitant?
Because it scared me.
Right.
Second, because I didn't believe them either. I
Right.
couldn't see myself as intuitive or psychic or anything. And I knew that I couldn't hurt anyone with the healing energy, but I believe that with the tarot or psychic readings, if you
Right.
get things wrong, you
Yeah.
can really have a massive impact on someone's life. And I didn't want to have the responsibility.
Right. And, I want to talk about that because we do have a responsibility, right? But, when people are telling you about their gifts, because this can be in any kind of gifts, when people or even people are encouraging you, isn't it interesting how we're like, no, I didn't believe them. No, I didn't believe them. You've
Yeah.
said that multiple times, and it's like, what got you to the point where you're like, well, I'm going to try it, or I do believe them, or did you have to really work on that? Because for me, I had to just have faith in myself that I could do the things that some people were encouraging me to do, and you kind of have to take the chance, kind of thing.
So it's a bit of both. After the sixth or seventh person who told me that,
Yeah.
I decided to take a weekend intensive in tarot with a local, I'm going to say celebrity, a woman who teaches the
Okay.
tarot. He's quite well known, etc. And I'd gone to her for several readings. I trusted her. And you know how usually people go to these workshops in pairs with their best friend because they're too
Yeah.
scared
Yeah.
to go on their own. I didn't have anyone to bring, so I went on my own. So I was the odd one on the table, everybody had a partner. And
Yeah.
so when the time came to practice on each other, well, the teacher said, you have to practice on me. And I was like, no, 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 I
Yes.
can't do this. Can you
Right.
imagine how terrifying it is? But I didn't have a choice. So she put me on the spot. I did the reading and she said, you're spot on
Yeah.
and you should do this professionally. So it was yet another voice, yet another
Right.
confirmation. I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a try again. So I signed up, and by then I had a young baby that I had to take in the sling with me to that mind body spirit fair. I signed up,
Yeah.
and the only person who came for a reading for me was another psychic medium who again did the same thing as the others did. She asked me for a reading. I was terrified, and then she said, "You're spot on."
Wow.
So at that point, I'm like, okay, maybe I have something to bring to the table. And I realized that because I was a healer and not just a psychic, I can actually bring healing into the readings. So people would get actually more than just guidance.
Yes,
They would get
exactly.
that
Right.
energy in the background. And I didn't realize, but the next 10 years, literally the spirit, whoever you want to call them, brought
Right.
me clients that needed more healing than they really needed guidance.
Wow.
So I gave them the guidance because that's what they wanted, but they also got the healing energy that they
Yes.
needed to support them. So that was actually rather beautiful.
That's really great. Oh my gosh. So you're
Yeah.
doing that is that part of what you do then now?
So I've decided to pivot at one point into helping people write books.
Okay.
Because at that point I'd written already 3 books and I knew I had a gift to help people. And with the clinical hypnotherapy, it really helps with the mindset and writer's block and all that sort of thing. And then I pivoted into business because I felt that there was enough traditional readers and healers out there, but I felt that actually business owners would really benefit from the guidance. And at that point, I realized that without knowing, I wasn't actually doing strictly tarot readings. I was doing Akashic Records reading, and I don't know if you know the difference.
No.
So Akashic Records readings, or Akashic Records, is something that comes within the realm of religion. A lot of religion talk about them as the book of life,
Okay.
as the book of all souls. So we're supposed to each have one book that retraces our entire existence as a soul throughout time and space. And these records are guarded by what people call the Lords of the Records. And traditionally, they can only be accessed by mystics through years and years of practice.
Okay.
But I realized that I grabbed a book about Akashic Records and I realized that's actually what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So I was and the reason I realized that was the case is because I always give people the guidance from the highest of level, if you can, and I'm not saying that I was better than other people as readers, but it was a very high level guidance, but yet it was very practical because of my background as a lawyer. So it was a really interesting mix. And then I realized that I could connect to the energy of books that wanted to be written through people.
Mhm.
and literally download title, entire structure, the way it was supposed to be published, everything else. And I could do the same for businesses. If people came to me and wanted to create a business, or they had a business that didn't feel quite aligned, maybe they'd been in business for a while and they'd taken into a direction where they lost a bit their sparkle or their mojo, I was able to connect to the energy of their business and tell them, well, this is what you need to do to feel that everything is back in order, that you feel excited about your business again, and, you know,
Right.
have the success back as well. So I loved doing that. I really did, because what the difference between the people I met at the Mind Body Spirit Fair and entrepreneurs is that you can give as much guidance as you want to a regular person, and I'm not judging by any, but
Right.
they probably won't act on it. Entrepreneurs are action takers.
Yes.
So that excited me because I could see results much more quickly, and that people would
Yes.
literally embrace it and say, yeah, what am I supposed to do? Let's do it now.
I love
And
that.
that,
I'm telling you. That's why I love going to masterminds and things like that,
yeah,
where we sit around and talk about things we need and then how we're going to do it. I just get so excited to give people ideas, or people give me ideas, and then we go and execute it. It
yeah,
to me, it's so exciting to see the
yeah.
results.
And this way I could see I could have more of a leverage and more of a ripple effect, because these people were going to affect lots of people as well. And I felt that my time was better spent working with someone who was going to have a big impact. And actually, I got excited. The bigger the visions my clients came with me to work with me, the more excited I got.
Wow.
So and I was able to see it in their energy field, whether sometimes I even told people, you're going to be a famous Hay House author, and some people recoiled and were scared, and some people embraced it, which was
Right.
just wonderful.
Well, and it's interesting, we talk about if you give somebody some information like that, saying you're going to be world famous or whatever, and they recoil, do you ever talk about then, like, what is it that's scaring you? Do you ever have that
So
conversation?
if they work with me as a VIP, that's exactly what we work on.
Okay.
It's their mindset, it's making things happen, it's putting a
Yes.
plan in place and working through their fears.
Well,
Yeah.
because it is the where we are, and especially when you're trying to work a business, um, what you think you should accomplish or can accomplish really starts going back from the way you grew up, right? And all the mindset that you have
Yeah.
left over. Because sometimes I have a friend who always says, be careful what you think, because it may not be your thoughts, you know, because we
Absolutely.
we've been told so many things through our life, and sometimes we're carrying them with us and still thinking them, and we weren't even the ones that thought it in the first place. We were told certain things. So
Absolutely.
it's interesting to clear all that out, to talk about that. That's what I've been I've that's been helpful to me when I've been moving forward. You feel that some people just say, well, I have imposter syndrome, but it seems to me like it's bigger than that. It seems like it goes deeper than that, than just imposter syndrome. Yes, we all feel insecure sometimes, but it's like it feels like this is a mindset thing, where you don't think you're deserving of moving forward, or you don't think you're good enough, or you have the skills to move forward, etc. I don't know. Those are the kinds
Yeah.
of things
And
I
when
have.
and when you realize, or when you remember that 90% of our actions are based on our subconscious, all
Okay.
those beliefs actually can completely block us from success without even us realizing what's happening.
Wow. That's amazing.
Um, and I want to mention a book because I had the opportunity and the privilege to interview Gay Hendricks. I don't know if you've ever heard of him
Oh,
on my podcast. He's a
okay.
multi New York bestseller author who talks about relationships, and he co-authored a lot of books with his wife, but he also wrote a book that has been absolutely seminal in the entrepreneurial world about mindset, called The Big Leap. And in it, he talks about the upper limit and how we sabotage ourselves and all sorts of things.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
great book, a great resource. And it really validates the point that success is 50% mindset.
Yes.
You can be the best at what you do if you don't sort out those beliefs, if you don't dig into your past. And I think we're going to get to the conversation where sometimes it's more than just beliefs that you espouse from your parents, peers, teachers. Sometimes there's trauma, there's
Right.
abuse. And if that happens, it can impact you in really toxic ways.
Right.
And in a way, I'm kind of a living example because I'm an overachiever, a perfectionist. I have a massive imposter syndrome.
Right.
But I was able in the past few years to link it to the fact that I had an abusive mother.
Right.
And then that's also why I had a string of abusive husbands. I talked about my first one, but I'm going through a divorce with my second one, which is the same kind of pattern. And I would have fallen into the same pattern again and again had I not continued to do work on myself to understand exactly what was happening.
I love that because that's what's been so important to me in my healing is understanding why I made the choices I did. What does my past look like? I'm going all the way back to childhood, thinking about all the things. And so why did I choose the boyfriends I did, the husband I did, right? And I love that you saw that you were going to continue that pattern if you
Yeah,
didn't start making the changes. And especially going back to you also had it in your childhood with an abusive mother. And unfortunately, we marry sometimes what we know, what seems comfortable.
absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
There's something that we want to finish. Our brain is trying to finish it or solve the problem or something, and that's how we end up in these situations. It's so incredible to me. It is kind of subconscious when it happens because it's not like we're choosing abuse on purpose.
No. And if you don't mind me sharing, the way I
Yeah.
see it is that even though it's abusive, even though it's uncomfortable, it's what we know.
Right.
And the nervous system considers this as safe, even if it's not, because
Yes.
it's what we know. The nervous system hates change. So happiness, and that's why often people who come from abusive backgrounds, even though they might not think that they have, because very often we're brainwashed into thinking we had a lovely childhood, which is what happened to me.
Right.
They need a lot of drama in their relationship, and that's because that drama was
Yes.
what they were used to as children. So it's their normal. It's almost like you're swimming in this water and you
Yes.
can't recognize the water for what it is because you've always been in these waters.
Right, exactly. And it's so interesting to me. Our brain is just, you're right, our brain is comfortable with this scenario, even if it's not healthy and it's toxic. It's so interesting to me. Um, in my ex's family, there's four children, and two of them say they had an amazing childhood, and two of them say they didn't.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. And I never thought much of it other than, well, of course, they're four different people. Of course, everyone's going to have a different viewpoint. But of course, the two that had an amazing childhood, they don't see it for the toxic that it was. And I didn't live in their childhood, but I see because I was married into it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I see all the toxic stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I wonder, the other two see it. And that's why they say their childhood wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me.
I
But
I
with,
think it's because we need a certain level of denial to survive what we've been
oh,
through.
for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So
That's a
I was
great
in
point.
denial about the abuse in my childhood for years. And it
Yes.
caught up with me at some point. And
Yes.
it caught up through my children, actually. When I had children, all that kind of stuff started to come to the surface and
Mhm.
scared me because I didn't see where it was coming from. It hit me, from left field. And I was
Right.
like, what the heck? But um I think that's why that journey into motherhood was like an awakening journey for me. And I
Awesome.
actually went to therapy 2 to 3 years before I had children, when I knew I wanted to have children,
Wow.
because I didn't want my children to be handed down the baggage that my parents had handed down to me. And I'd drawn the line and I said, it stops with me.
Oh my gosh, Ange, that totally made me tear up.
Oh,
It really did. My God, that was beautiful. That did.
yeah,
I don't know why, but it really hit me because that's what I'm saying now is I'm done. Like, I don't care if it runs in the family. It's running out here. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this kind of stuff where we're all traumatized and unhealthy and everything, and I'm not passing this to my children. And so now I'm having conversations with my children. If we're gonna have healing, it's gonna run out here. Oh my gosh. Anyway, high five from across the world to you. That
thank
was,
you.
oh my gosh, I don't know why that hit me the way it did, but it was meant to. I'm so proud of you for doing that, even having the forethought to do it before you had children because you didn't want to pass it on.
I didn't. This was my, and I could observe what happened is I was actually lucky to go to therapy when I was 9 years old.
Okay.
So even though my mum was abusive, she could see there was something wrong, and she took me to a
Okay.
psychologist to get her to fix me.
Right.
Because of course there was nothing wrong with her as a
Because
mum.
you were the problem.
Yes.
Oh my
But
gosh,
it,
we can laugh about this now. I'm only laughing because I have heard, I mean, I've had friends who are psychologists like, oh my gosh, these parents bring their kids in and I want to go, you need to be here. you know,
yeah.
not just the kids. It's not the kids' fault.
And you're so right, because I went back to see her when I was 13, and she said to me, look, when you came to me as a child, there was nothing I could do other
Yes.
than to strengthen you, to make you strong enough to survive the abuse.
Yes, exactly.
And then I went back to the same person when I was 20, and I said, look, I want to work on this. I want to make sure my kids never suffer at my
Yes.
hands.
Wow.
And that's when we started the work, which was beautiful.
Yes.
Um,
And that's
I
kind
could
of what
see
we're doing.
intuitively, I knew that parents need to do the work, and I definitely wanted to do it myself. And I was also helped by my sister, who's 3 years older than me, who went to therapy when I was 18 or 19. And so she kind of paved the way. She opened the door, even though she was criticized heavily by my mother as a weakling, as the
Of
fact that she,
course.
she didn't have. And my dad had gone also to therapy, which is remarkable for a man of his
Yeah.
age. When his
Right.
dad died, he went to therapy, and my mum criticized him all the way. But these two people,
Wow.
my dad and my sister, sort of opened the way for me to see that
Yes.
perhaps therapy could help me.
Yes.
And so that's what I did. And my sister never had any children because she didn't want to hurt her children.
Yeah.
And so we took two different paths that were quite similar in the way that for her, it was
Right.
not to have children that was going to keep her children safe.
Yes.
And for
Yes.
me, it was going to therapy to make sure that when I had
Yeah,
the
you could
children, I
have,
would,
yes. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. That's amazing. And I think it's a really good point to say that, I know not everyone is open to going to therapy. I applaud your dad and your sister for opening that door, paving that way. I can see where maybe your mom, I could see that with your mom criticizing, maybe she was probably scared they might change too much or they might not like her. Who knows what her reasons were, right? Who knows? And I know that there's lots of reasons why people don't want to go to therapy or they're scared to go to therapy, but that was just the first step for me. That was just one thing that worked for me. I also do lots of other things as well. That's just one tool in my toolbox, and it has been instrumental in, like what you said, that you were 9 years old and all she could do was get you stronger, right? She just to be able to withstand the abuse. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was getting stronger to be able to handle the toxic people in my life, and you get tools, right? And how did you feel even as a young girl then? Did you feel like it helped at all, even when you were a young girl and you couldn't do anything else?
It did. And I tell you what, it's because I could be completely myself. And there's some really sad memories I have from then, but actually that are very beautiful for me. I remember walking into her little office and bringing my doll and sitting my doll next to me and say, she's here to observe because she can't do anything about anything. And I remember drawing a drawing of myself as a monster with 15 eyes and no mouth.
Yeah.
And these things stay with you, but it
Yes.
it it sounds sad, but actually it was empowering
Yeah.
because I was able to tell her things I could never tell my mum
Right.
or
Yes.
anyone else. Because there's also, and I want to make this point, and I don't know if you'll relate, but because I came from a well-off background, quite rich background, there's
Okay.
a law of silence, that you
Yes.
never criticize your parents, you never take your dirty laundry out, and if you do, you're shut down violently.
Right.
So I knew about that even as a child, intuitively, and as a young girl, as a teen, I knew about the law of silence, and I knew that I had to keep this thing to myself, which is actually why I moved to the UK to free my voice, so that I could write in English, so that I could say my truth, because I knew I could never do that back in France.
Okay.
I
Yes.
had like a muzzle,
Yeah. No, it makes sense, and I do see that even in my ex's family. They were very the father was in a high position, and I think that there was a level of we have to look a certain way and be a certain way, and so I think that's how kind of the toxic family dynamics kind of grew from that, because you have to look and be a certain way so you can't be yourself. And I totally get that. That runs rampant in so many families, and unfortunately, even in all levels, right? Class levels, without even being told anything, just that if you say something, sometimes you're shut down. No, you can't talk that way, you can't think that way, you can't believe that way. And that's hard when you don't have a voice at all. You don't. And even then, when you get to be an adult and you go, I think I can have a voice now, I don't know that people are really just ready to go and do whatever they want. I'm 56, I'm just figuring it out.
And also, when it's your family of origin, you also are afraid to be cut off from the family.
Yes.
So you put up with a lot of things because you have so much to lose. And I need to say, even though it's sad, I'm only in touch with 2 of my cousins in my family of origin.
Yeah.
I'm not in touch with my mom, not in touch with my brother, not my sister. Everybody's gone because I cut this path for myself to be true to my voice and my story, and people didn't like it.
Right. Well, no, but it's something that you have to do if it's right for you. And it
It
doesn't.
was literally killing me. My throat was so I as I said, I didn't go into the detail of what happened in the year 2001, but I got a massive scare. And I literally, when I moved to the UK, I used to say as a joke that I rebirthed myself through the Eurotunnel. I don't know if you took the Eurotunnel to go from
I
London to
did.
Paris.
I did.
Because it's true. I rebirthed myself. I never had these problems again once I was in the UK. Once I was able to be myself and say what I wanted and not have to fear any consequences.
Right. And that there's people don't realize that trauma, whatever that looks like, is being stored in our body and affecting us in different ways. The weirdest thing is I'm wearing earrings, and that may not seem like a big deal to anybody. I could not wear earrings my entire marriage because my ears were so itchy all the time. And then when I was learning who's Laura 2.0, what is she going to do? Let's see if she wears earrings. My ears don't itch anymore. And I'm like, is that because of that? Who knows? But but I just know that things in my body are starting to heal because I'm not around the toxic, I'm not around the trauma anymore. So,
Yeah, and if you don't mind me saying, the body has a language, and
okay.
who's to say your ears weren't saying to you that what you were hearing was irritating and false,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, okay. I love
and
that.
so that your ears were constantly in pain because of what you were
What I was
experiencing.
hearing. No, you're so right. Oh my gosh. No, you're so right because I know that parts of our body are connected to certain things. And so no, I think you're right. Oh my gosh, that makes sense to me. That makes sense.
And if
You're
it
right.
didn't, that's fine. You need to
Yes.
feel it. Does it
Yes.
resonate,
It
right?
does. It does
But the
resonate.
body does speak in metaphorical ways. So
Yes.
for me, having all these problems around my throat, and I
Right.
had to have half of my thyroid removed.
Okay.
And very suddenly, because I had this nodule that grew so quickly and completely suffocated me. So I had to
Wow.
literally be wheeled and for it to be removed.
Wow.
And and it was because I couldn't speak any of my truth, not to my parents, not to my abusive husband. I lived in fear constantly.
Yes.
And I couldn't see a way out. And my body was screaming at me. Absolutely. And the day I moved to the UK, I slept like a baby, no more problems with my throat, ears, or nose infection. Gone.
Amazing. Right, because you were free to speak your truth,
And
and
yet it had plagued me for over 30 years. Isn't that interesting?
that is so interesting. Well, it's true. And I think we need to check our body because it's not always just a medical thing. And I've talked about this on the show before. Different people have talked about this. It's interesting the way it's all connected. So,
There's a really good book that's called The Body Keeps the Score.
yes. It's so funny.
Uh,
I need to just get it because I have mentioned it, I swear, on every episode. Every
okay.
because I'm like, I haven't even read it, but I got healed just from the title. You know,
Yes, the title is powerful. I agree.
it is, and I need to just get it. I'm just gonna get it from the library today and check it out because it we've mentioned it so many times. It's so true. What you're going through is in your body. It's just you don't realize it. Like, why do you think when people go, "Oh, I have back pain or whatever"? Well, you might be stressed. And I
So I want to
know.
give you another example
Okay.
that for me speaks volumes. I had the worst of migraines from the time I was 15 until 2019.
Okay.
And what happened in 2019? I stopped talking to my mum.
Okay.
I divorced my mum, as I like to call it.
Right.
I haven't spoken to her since. I haven't had a migraine since.
That's amazing. That's
Right?
amazing.
I know it's anecdotal,
Right.
but if I went into the energy and explained to you why, it would
Right.
make complete sense.
Oh no, it's true, but I think that we don't pay attention. And I think I don't remember what it was. Oh, I saw a thing saying if you're wanting to like reach out to your ex or these kinds of things, they said journal what you're feeling. And I feel like that's really important to do. Is I love journaling. I love writing down my feelings. I do it when I'm praying as well. I just love to do it. It just there's an energy for me when I'm writing. I just enjoy doing it. And I try to write, what am I feeling? Who was I talking to? How are things going that way? What's going on in my body? Because I want to understand the whole thing and how things are affecting me. So that's what I've been trying to do.
That's beautiful. And it's funny because I'm releasing an episode on my podcast tomorrow, literally for Halloween. I decided to talk about ghosts, energy vampires,
Okay.
graveyards, psychic attacks, all that sort of stuff. And a lot of the people who have abused us are energy vampires. So they're not just do our head in, they don't just manipulate us mentally and emotionally. There's an energetic stuff that's going on in the background that can
Yes.
sometimes stop us from leaving them because we're a prisoner, because they
Yes.
suck us dry, because they drain us and we're exhausted and we can't even see the wood for the tree.
It's true. It's so funny because I use that word vampires. I don't use energy vampire, but I use vampires. I say, you know, oh, that person's a vampire. And it's what I mean. It's those energy vampires, this person who just sucked the life out of us.
Yeah.
You know, those people that you don't enjoy being around, that all they do is
Yeah.
take, take, take. It's too much.
So I shared it in a blog post because I'm also an author for the Taoist online on Medium.
Uh-huh.
And I shared this on Sunday, a story. My grandmother was an energy vampire. And even though I loved some sides of her, she was lovely in some ways, but in other ways, she could suck the joy out of you in seconds.
Yeah.
And
Poor
I used to
grandma.
think that I was moody because
Yes.
when I went to see her, I was in a good mood. When I left her, I was in the bad mood, and I didn't see the link.
You didn't know,
And then
right?
until I saw enough people doing that to me and training in Reiki, and then it made sense. I was like, oh
Okay.
my God, of course, that's what they're doing. They zap you, and then you think you have a problem when it's
Yes.
them.
You're almost
You might even
gaslighting
think
you.
you
You're
have a
gaslighting
psychological problem or mental illness when really it's them.
you're gaslighting yourself into thinking that
Yeah.
you're the problem. what
And I'm going
what
to
is
give you
it?
another example that happened literally with a client a few weeks back. And I'm not going to give too much of the detail because
Yes.
I want to keep it confident. I respect my client's confidentiality. But
Yes.
literally, this woman went to see her doctor because she woke up in the middle of the night thinking she had a stroke.
Oh my gosh.
It was awful. She went to see the doctor. All the tests were clear. She didn't have a stroke. And then we did a session. And when I tuned in, she had been psychically attacked by someone who literally completely zapped her to the point where she felt she had a stroke and she couldn't move and she couldn't even. And
Oh
once I removed that, she felt fine. So
gosh.
people, what I like to say, it's very important, and if that's the only thing that your audience
Yeah.
remembers, people don't need to understand about energy or know about energy in order to use your energy.
Yes. Gosh.
Energy vampires do it instinctively
They
because for
do.
them, it's a survival mechanism. They are drained. They are actually, I compare them a little bit to those black holes in the sky. You know, when a star collapses on itself, it
Yes.
starts sucking the light out of people. That's exactly what they're doing.
Right.
And they can't do it any other way because they've collapsed themselves into this pool of negativity. And so they need other people to feed them.
And unfortunately, what they do is they find those of us who are very vibrant
Yep.
and happy and positive. And I know I attract those people, but I have learned how to set boundaries with myself and with other people so that I'm not just completely getting the life sucked out of me because I could be, when I was a people pleaser, I would allow them to just like suck the life out of me. And now I have my boundaries and I don't spend as much time with those vampires because I just, you can't. And
And
that's the thing, is like that you can't.
and you're so spot on. The first tip that I give people when they're in with an energy vampire, especially if it's a relative, because you can't really divorce your
Yeah.
relatives unless you're me, you divorce your mum.
Right.
But it's to spend a limited amount of time, prepare yourself ahead of time, and
Yes.
then when you're with them, avoid conversations, switch off, change subjects, do as much as you can to avoid them. Because what they do, they either make you feel sorry for themselves or they create a conflict, because that's how they get into your energy field and start sucking you.
Oh my
It's by
God.
creating that conflict, that shock, or that it's like opening a door. So if
Yeah.
you're very careful not to feel pity for them.
Yes.
Pity is a horrible feeling anyway, because
Yeah.
it's condescending, I feel. Anyway, that's
Right.
how I.
It
And
is.
if
Yeah.
you're careful not to get into their hooks when they try to hook you into the drama or
Yes.
into an argument, then you can keep yourself safe. But very often you need to limit it to like when I still saw my mum, I knew that I could only stay with her for 3 days. If I stayed any longer, she would start to suck me in.
Okay.
So
Right.
I always kept it to 3 days. And
Right.
now it's 0, and I've never felt happier in that on that front. So yeah.
Well, and that's totally okay because that's a decision that some people need to make for sure. I have that in some parts of my life. There's people I don't see, and it's just the way it is, because I've had to protect myself from the negativity and the toxicity. So, well, oh my gosh, thank you for this amazing conversation. It's been so good. Um, I will put all your information in the show notes, but do you want to tell people where they can find you? All the places
Yes,
they can find you?
I would love to. So I'm on LinkedIn as Ange de Lumiere, and I'm on Facebook, and that's the main two platforms. There's well, I do have quite a few videos on YouTube as the spiritual lawyer.
Okay.
And I might get into TikTok, but I'm not quite sure yet. But for now, the best place to find me is LinkedIn and Facebook.
Okay, and
Um,
and we'll have that. Are those in your links that you've put in the show notes? If not, we'll put
They
them in
should
there.
be. And obviously, the easiest way is to find my podcast, True Spirituality with Ange, because
Yes.
that's even easier to find. And then I always put links in, like you do. We all do,
Yes.
don't we? Our
Yes.
podcaster.
Of
We find
course.
a way to show people where we are. And I think tomorrow's episode, and I don't know when this episode is going to be aired.
I don't either. So it's not going to be for tomorrow.
Okay, no. Well, then it will be definitely available, because
Yes.
today is the 2nd of November. I hope you don't
Yes.
mind me saying it.
No, I don't. No.
So it will be out for people to check it out. And it's an episode
Good.
I'm very fond of, because my biggest goal with this
Huh.
podcast is to keep people safe.
That's awesome.
And one of the second episode
Oh no. Oh no, you froze.
and
Oh,
for me,
hold
that's
on one
super
second. Hold
important.
on.
Yeah.
You froze. So
Okay.
after you said I want to keep people safe, you froze after that. So say that part again after that.
So where were we when I froze?
You were saying the main focus with your podcast was to keep people safe, and then
Yes.
so
Yeah.
go.
So yeah, and that's why the second episode on the podcast is how to cold proof your spiritual journey, because I know there's a lot of narcissists and abuser and perpetrators in the spiritual circles who
Yes,
are trying or preying on kind, intelligent,
yes,
and bright light people.
it's true.
It's more women than men, but it's both actually.
Right.
And I want to be this guiding light that keeps them safe when they explore, things outside of religion and
That's thank you
traditional
for doing that.
organized.
That's amazing. That'll be a great episode to listen to. It's so true. I actually have an episode coming out in a few weeks, so it'll be out by the time this comes out, about a Facebook friend of mine who was in a cult,
Yeah.
and she's going to talk about that. She's going to talk about how she got in, um, why we probably would have joined too. You know what I mean? I tell
Yeah.
him at the end, I was like, yeah, I would have joined with you because when I was unhealthy, I could see why she got in. You know what I mean? And she talks about what it gave her and how she stayed in so long. and the toxic relationships that came out of it. So thank you for giving that information and helping people stay safe, because that's what I want to do too, because I don't want to dim my light. I don't want you to dim your light. You know what I mean? I want us to walk through this world the great people that we are, but we have to be careful because we're very attractive to people who want to manipulate,
Yeah.
narcissists, and which you see that in cults as well, and
Oh, absolutely.
and
It's the same
religious,
pattern.
yes, religious organizations. It's all the same pattern. It's all the gaslighting and manipulation to get you to be in a particular
Yeah. And the
organization.
reason it works is because a combination, I would say, of being kind, wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt, but at
Yes,
the same time having deep wounds. And
right,
so they can latch on to these wounds and feed to these wounds, and we don't see it coming.
right.
So it's, yeah.
That's why I'm working on those deep wounds, but I'm doing pretty good. And I'm 14 months past my divorce, 13 months, and it's going great. I'm doing a lot of work. I'm not scared to do the work, so I just keep doing the work. And if something comes up, I look at it and take care of it because it's just
Very
important.
important.
It's very
Very,
important.
very important.
I want to move forward in my life in a healthy way, and the next person I'm with, I want to be healthy. You know what I mean? So that's been important to me and my goal. So, and of course, I want to share
Okay,
with
to
the audience.
mention one more little thing,
Sure.
because you're talking about being safe in the next relationship.
Yes.
I was lucky enough to do a 6 to 7 week training with an organization in the UK that supports women who come out of domestic abuse.
Okay.
And the program is called the Freedom Program, but she also wrote a book.
Oh, okay.
And I will send you the link. And
Yes,
she
please
was
do, and we'll
a
put it in the
probation
show notes.
officer. This British woman was a
Okay.
probation officer working with abusers and
Okay.
perpetrators.
Okay.
And she wrote this book, which is amazing because it gives you all the different ways that these perpetrators manipulate and abuse you. And it
Oh,
opens your eyes. Whilst I went through the course, I remembered all the ways. And it really, I feel it's like, okay, so I call it my inoculation or my vaccine against
okay.
narcissists.
Great. Perfect.
I will definitely send you the link if you want to
Yes,
add it in the show notes.
I
If not, cut out
do.
this part. It's fine. I'm
No,
not
I think that would
promoting,
be very no, I think that would be very helpful because we do a lot of discussion about red flags and things like that, but I think there's always room for more information and
yeah.
and people learn in different ways. So no, I will put it in the show notes for sure because it sounds like a
Okay.
very helpful book. Sounds like something I might read. So, yeah, it's definitely sounds very helpful. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you just sharing with us and everything. And if anyone wants to reach out, of course, we'll have all the information in the show notes. And of course, find us on social media. We'll have a post about Ange, and then you can comment on this episode. Tell us if it resonated with you and what you thought about it. So, Ange, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am an absolute fan of your podcast. I've listened to every single episode. It's
Thank
one of
you.
my favorite podcasts of the time. So
I appreciate it so much. Okay, guys, we'll
thank
talk to you
you.
next time. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so give me a second. I'm going to pause the recording.